I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. I've got to show you former Vice President Mike Pence's town hall he held recently with CNN, where he's trying to promote his new book, and it's part of this media tour he's going on, which is just so weird and bizarre, and he attacks the January 6th committee as being a partisan witch hunt. Meanwhile, former Vice President Pence was the target of the assassination attempt by Donald Trump, and former Vice President Pence talks about how and why he supported election deniers during the midterm elections. I mean, just some of the weirdest stuff, but this town hall he did with Jake Tapper at CNN, it's just like, honestly, it's like one of the strangest things I've ever seen. I want to show this to you. I got some clips of this because it's so hard to even believe. You got to see it for yourself. So let me just start off with former Vice President Pence taking questions from the audience. And it was someone named Andrea, and he keeps calling her Barbara. And she said, "My name is Andrea." And he like short circuits for a moment. It's just one of the strangest things. Here, play this clip.
Wouldn't this freedom based on Roe also continue?
Barbara, thank you. I represented Madison County in Congress for many years. So
That's Andrea.
it's nice to see you. You know, when I think about,
I mean, isn't that one of the strangest things you've ever seen? It's like he is like a robot. And so now he's asked by Jake Tapper. And by the way, to give him credit, Jake Tapper, I think, actually did a good job in this interview or town hall with former Vice President Pence. And here Tapper asks Pence, he goes, "So why did you support these election deniers during the midterm elections?" Here, play the clip.
Talking about the 2022 election, and I think that your analysis is one that is generally accurate, that the candidates who were hung up on the election lies of 2020 did not fare as well in 2022 as the ones who stepped forward and talked about the future. And I know you know better than anyone in a bad way what those election lies can mean in terms of crowds being incited. I was surprised to see you campaigning for Don Baldock in New Hampshire and Blake Masters in Arizona, who were two people who lied about the election, who defeated, one could argue, better candidates in the Republican primaries, who were future-leaning candidates. Why did you endorse them? Why did you support them? Why did you campaign for them?
well, you know, I've often said I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order. But I'm a Republican. And once Republican primary voters had chosen their nominees, I went out and traveled to 35 states over the last year and a half to see if we could elect a Republican majority in the House and Senate, elect Republican governors all across the country. It didn't mean, as it hasn't meant in the past, that I agree with every statement or every position candidates that I'm supporting in the Republican Party have taken, but I was pleased to do it.
Yeah, and you wouldn't know it, but here's Pence talking about how it was his belief that throughout December and throughout January, he believed that Donald Trump was just going to support the peaceful transition of power. What are you talking about? Where were you? Play the clip.
All along the way in December, and frankly, all the way through January 4th, I continued to hope that he would come around.
I mean, can you be any more delusional than that? I guess you can, because let me show you this next clip where Pence talks about the January 6th committee, and he calls it a partisan witch hunt and how it made him very uncomfortable. Really, that's what made you uncomfortable? Unfortunately, Jake Tapper did have the appropriate comebacks and said, "What are you talking about? This is nothing unprecedented about the January 6th committee other than the fact that the person you worked for, Trump, tried to kill you, led an insurrection, and tried to stop, for the first time in our nation's history, the peaceful transition of power." Play the clip.
Pelosi. And that the Democrat Speaker of the House appointed all the members of the committee.
After McCarthy, the Republican, removed his members.
But I must tell you, in my 12 years in the Congress of the United States, the idea of a partisan committee on Capitol Hill, a committee appointed by one party, was antithetical to what the Congress is.
It did happen before, though. It happened for the Katrina committee when Democratic leaders refused to cooperate. You were actually on Capitol Hill at the time. There was a Benghazi committee that was all formed by Republicans. So it's not unprecedented.
Well, and I must tell you, the principle itself was offensive to me. I thought
And finally, it doesn't get more bizarre than this. Jake Tapper goes to Pence and says, like, aren't you angry at Trump? I mean, he tried to kill you. Doesn't that make you upset? And I kid you not, I'm going to show you the clip. Former Vice President Pence goes, no, I forgave him. He and I had a talk, and I prayed for him, and we're good. We're good now. Here, play the clip.
If I were you, I would still be livid with Donald Trump. I would be so furious. And I know you're a measured man. But are you still angry?
Well, I must tell you, the president's words and tweet that day were reckless. They endangered my family and all the people at the Capitol. And I was angry. But you know, my Christian faith tells me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And in the Christian faith, forgiveness is not optional. We literally pray in the Lord's Prayer to forgive those who trespass against us. And in the days that followed, when the president asked to meet with me after he'd made the right statements to the country, he'd committed to a peaceful transfer of power, he'd condemned the people that rioted at the Capitol, we met, we sat down. And I prayed for God's grace to meet that moment in that spirit. And it wasn't easy. And to be honest with you, I'm as human as the next guy. And I still pray for the president. And I pray for the grace to forgive him and all those responsible for that tragic day. But
you know, as I watch this, I reflect on the January 6th committee hearings where former Vice President Pence was given a lot of credit for not going along with the plot to overthrow our government. And there are lots of people who were like, don't give this person credit. Like, he did the bare minimum. I mean, on one day, he didn't agree to overthrow our government. Like, yippee, should we give him a gold medal for that? Like, what are you talking about? And, you know, given all of the factors as you watch the January 6th committee, you know, it was easy to say, look, former Vice President Pence did act courageously, you know, on that day. But I take that back, because when I see clips like this, it's hard to give somebody credit like that who is complicit and who is still complicit. I mean, the cowardice, the lack of spine, whatever it is that we just saw there, it is hard to applaud any of his conduct if that's who he is right there. I mean, he's someone who went along with it, refused to take any action. Sure, on January 6th itself, he did the right thing, and I guess he deserves credit for not overthrowing our government, but that's a fairly low bar of credit to give him. I mean, he didn't agree to reject the actual electors and certify the fraudulent and phony electors. Does he deserve credit for that? Yeah, he deserves credit for that. But again, that's the bare minimum. Not doing a coup is where we're congratulating elected leaders. Oh, you didn't do a coup. Congratulations. You are great. Really? You know, he has such an opportunity here to make an important statement about our democracy, to condemn Trump, to condemn election deniers. And what did he say? He goes, I'm a Christian first, a conservative second, and then a Republican, but I am a Republican. So are you, first off, being an insurrectionist is not being a Republican. Okay, having these views that you cheer on pandemics and you engage in denying of election results and supporting insurrections, like being Vladimir Putin's buddy, like that should not be what it means to be a Republican. Sure, Trump and MAGA extremists have turned that into what that is, but like most actual Republicans are leaving and have left the MAGA Republican Party and said that's not actually what the Republican Party is. Independents and non-affiliated voters have looked at that and go, what the hell is that MAGA extremist weirdness, book burning, pro-pandemic, pro-insurrection, election denying? It's so dangerous. They're taking away our freedoms. They're preventing a woman to have the freedom over her own body. Like, who are these people? What is this insanity taking place right here? And that's what Pence goes, that no matter what, he's going to support the election deniers who tried to get him killed. I mean, how do you possibly praise this guy? You can't. You really can't. I mean, whatever that was just incredibly embarrassing and humiliating. And that's who he is. That's who he is. That's who they are. That's why I say, there is a mass exodus away from that. And if you don't look at that and you don't go, if you look at that and you go, that's normal, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, that's universally very strange what I just showed you was. Anyway, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button right now. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. It's free to subscribe, so hit the subscribe button. Also, would you consider becoming a patron of the MeidasTouch Network? Support independent media. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. There's lots of great exclusive content over at patreon.com/MeidasTouch. But most importantly, we are not funded by any of the investors who fund the millionaires or the billionaires. We have zero outside investors. So we are just 100% accountable to you because we are powered by democracy and fueled 100% by your generosity. So no worries if you can't, but if you can, go check it out, will you? Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch and consider subscribing because it goes a long way to help. Wherever you are in the world, you could subscribe. Go to patreon.com/MeidasTouch. I'm Ben Meiselas. Until next time.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs. It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser. At store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.